Welcome to A Matter of Perspective with Judge Derwin Webb. Obviously, I'm your host, Judge Derwin Webb. I'm here with my man, Dr. Ricky Jones. Man that needs no introduction at all. Dr. Jones, how are you doing today?
Hey, man, I'm always good when I'm with you, brother. You one of the few cats. I mean, I'm being serious about this. You're one of the few guys that I got a lot of love for, a lot of respect for. You know, whenever you call, I do not say no. And so I'm very happy to spend some time with you on this new endeavor.
Man, I appreciate you not saying no because you're my last choice. No, you were my first choice, man. I'm glad you could be here today because all I want to do is just talk.
Right.
People know who you are. We know that you're at U of L. You're a professor there. You're an engagist, a community engager. I'm not going to say activist.
You made a Jesse Jackson word up and engagist.
But I just want to talk to you about you, man. People know who you are. People think they know who you are, at least. I just want to talk to you about where you come from, who you are, your teams, your sports, a little pop culture, whatever we have time for. But I just want to talk to you about you because I know you.
Right.
I just want other people to know you also. So
Right.
I know you're from Atlanta. Tell me about your times in Atlanta.
Well, you know, D, I always tell people, and for people who don't know, I call you D. But folk always want to talk about the professional resume. You know, graduated from Northside High School in Atlanta, same school the Jasmine guy attended. And
By the way, I did see some of those pictures on Facebook, by the way.
Me and Jasmine guy?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's another story. But, you know, they talk about, you know, I left Northside, went to prep school in Newport, Rhode Island, graduated from Naval Academy Prep, attended the Naval Academy for 2 years, then went on, transferred, graduated from Morehouse College, you know, Martin Luther King Jr. School, then went on to the University of Kentucky where I had a PhD by the time I was 28. That's the great professional story. You know,
Right,
that's the
right.
story that a lot of people know and certainly they'll cleave to. The real story is different, though. You know, on the
Well,
other
what's the
side.
real story?
The real story is my mother got pregnant at 14 years old. First time she had sex, she got pregnant. Had me at 15. My father was in his 30s when he impregnated my mother, and I did not meet my father until I was in my 30s. Obviously, at 15, nobody's really prepared to be a parent. So I was raised by my grandmother, who was from rural Georgia, never attended school, died in 2009, never really learning to read, kind of stumbled through some reading, but was virtually illiterate. Raised in the housing projects of Atlanta by my grandmother and kind of fought through that, you know, to move forward and do some different things. So, you know, I was the first person in my immediate family to graduate high school. So, you know, the true story is a little bit more rough and tumble, grinded out than, you know, the professional resume story. But, you know, life was good. When you're that poor, right, and you're growing up around other poor people, you don't really have a sense that you're poor because everybody's kind of living the same way. If you don't have a father and you're looking around at everybody else who doesn't have a father around daily, that's not something that affects you in the same way that it affects other people. So rather than look at my childhood as a time of trauma, I look at my childhood as something that, you know, put some steel in me to deal with the world once I left Atlanta. So
Right.
I don't have bad memories of my childhood.
But you said something to me and some other guys not too long ago that was kind of funny to me. You said that you grew up about 6 miles away from Morehouse growing up and never set foot on that campus at all. Tell me about the first
Yeah.
time you actually went to the campus.
Well, the first time I actually went to the campus was when I was going over, attempting to transfer. And it's funny because your producer, Fred, did one of the nicest things for me ever. He did a piece. He has a video series called Part 5, where, you know, he's introducing the community to different people. And if you do know him, he highlights different parts of their lives. He comes at it from a different perspective. And so he really went in on this Naval Academy Morehouse Black Studies linkage for me. When I was very young, when I was leaving high school, I initially attended the U.S. Naval Academy. You know, I was recruited there. I didn't know what that was about. People think, oh, it's an elite school. I didn't know anything about that. I went to the Naval Academy for one simple reason. Well, really two simple reasons. I was told that, one, I could go to school for free. They would give me money in school so I could, in my mind, I could send some money back to my grandmother. And two, I'd have a job once I got out. You know, I would be going to the Navy or the Marine Corps. So I saw that as set. I was very excited by the proposition of making $30,000 a year once I got out of college. That seemed to me, a kid from the project, to be an immense amount of money. But when I got to the Naval Academy, dude, I so rebelled against that environment. You know, being an inner city kid, linked up with some other inner city kids, and long story short, I became a criminal. An absolute criminal, D. I mean, the Naval Academy, as I told Fred, has, you know, the honor code says I would not lie, cheat, steal, or tolerate those who do. Look, bruh, I lied, I cheated, I stole, and I hung out with those who did. Mm-hmm. But when you're functioning like a criminal like that, you know, I had that in me. You ain't gonna survive in that environment forever. And I absolutely hated it. And so it led to me having to get up out of there. And that's a longer story. But a black lieutenant at the Naval Academy directed me to some folks that he knew at Morehouse. He was like, man, you don't really belong here. You need to go over here, talk to this Master Chief at Morehouse who I know, and he can try to help you get into school. That was my first time on the campus. Mm-hmm. And my first time on that campus, you know, I was told that I had to go talk to a guy. The dean of admissions at the time was a fellow named Sterling Hudson. And this story I told Fred. And it was one of the more emotional things in my life. Keep in mind, at this point in my life, I didn't even know that Martin Luther King Jr. had attended Morehouse. I didn't know anything about that. I did not have any historical context for it. I just knew I needed to get into school. That was it. And so I was sent over to talk to this guy, Sterling Hudson, to talk to him about what had happened at the Naval Academy. And so I told my grandmother, I was like, I gotta go over here, talk to this man, Mama. They're not gonna let me in school when they know that I'm a criminal. I've been a criminal, right? But I was conscious. I was getting conscious by that time. And so I go over to Morehouse, first time over there, and meet Sterling Hudson. And the man says, so you're Ricky Jones, you're the young man that caused all that trouble at the Naval Academy. Because I did more than criminal activity, I will say that. You know, that's when I was coming into manhood. I was coming into my blackness. And I was like, damn, this is gonna fall apart right now. And so, my grandmother told me, don't lie to him, tell him the truth. Mm-hmm. And I said, yes, sir, that's me. Brother stood up and he said, son, let me shake your hand. I don't know any self-respecting black man who wouldn't cause trouble in a place like that. Welcome to Morehouse College. Welcome home. And that changed my life, man. But that was my first time on the campus because I grew up in a world of poverty. There's this idea of, you know, Atlanta being the black Mecca, but there's several different Atlantas. There's an affluent black Atlanta, and there's a very, very poor black Atlanta. So I grew up in Southwest Atlanta. I grew up in the SWATs, not very far from Morehouse, but I had no business at Morehouse. Mm-hmm. It just didn't work out that way. So that was my life.
Let me ask you a question. Do you remember when we first met?
I remember us playing basketball together many years ago. I think Brian Edwards introduced us.
No, actually,
sure.
I'm going to tell you how we first met. We first met at a football game. You don't remember this. We met at a football game.
Yeah, you were working at U of L then.
I was working at U of L.
Yeah.
You actually sat in front of me when the University of Louisville was playing against the University of Kentucky, and that was our first meeting.
Wow.
And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because the stuff that you're talking about right now, stuff, your childhood and how you got to Morehouse and how you got to Louisville and all that different stuff,
yeah.
We almost parallel. I almost thought about going to the Naval Academy to play basketball.
Wise choice not to.
Then I went to Atlanta to visit some relatives. Someone tried to talk to me about going to Morehouse before I came to the University of Louisville.
Oh, wow.
And then all the times that we could have crossed paths, we actually wound up being here together. So it's just kind of funny. Let me ask you this question.
That's incredible, man.
A lot of people know who you are, what you stand for. Is there something that actually was put into you that kind of shaped who you are or the perspectives and the values that you have now?
You know, that kind of comes back to the Naval Academy experience, actually. You know, you have to understand, even though I grew up poor, I grew up in a black world, right? And we're right around the same age. You're a couple of years younger than me. But I have no memory of being in a space where there was not a black mayor. You know, Maynard Jackson was elected the first black mayor of Atlanta in 1973. You know, I was 6 years old. So I don't have any memory of politics in the city before that. And I went to black schools. I went to school with one white kid. He was at my elementary school for like a quarter, maybe, when I was in 5th grade or so. But outside of that, I went to school with all black kids. majority black teachers, in fact. You know, I had like 2 white teachers all the way up until I got to high school. So I didn't, even though I was impoverished, I didn't grow up with this inferiority complex necessary. And I didn't grow up in a world where I had to consider race, because it was all black. You know, that's just what it was. I consider race, it wasn't the environment of my mother or my grandmother, wasn't that experience. But when I got to high school, I was bused to Buckhead in Atlanta, which is one of the richest areas in the country, and one of the best high schools, certainly in the city, probably in the South. And it was predominantly white. Started to experience race a little bit there, but still didn't understand structural racism. It wasn't until I made it to college, when I was at the Naval Academy, that I started to see disparate treatment and stuff that I couldn't really process, I couldn't really understand. You know, white midshipmen might do something, get one punishment, have one approach. A black midshipman do something else, you know, something else would happen to them. People getting excited while I would, either my plebe year, it might have been my plebe year, I think there was the first black brigade commander happened. I'm like, why are these people so excited that there's a black dude who's the top midshipman now? It was the first, so that was a trip to me. Like, it's the first in the mid to late 1980s, something's wrong with that, you know. But by the time I was a sophomore, I really started to see these stark racial differences. And there were 36 companies at the Naval Academy in the brigade. There were no black company officers, right? Certainly, the administration of the place was white, just like you see at most colleges and universities around the country. But there was a black dude that was appointed company officer in my sophomore year, not of my company, but another company. And I remember me and my friends being really excited. Like, oh my God, there's a brother. You know, he's like 11th company commander. He's the company officer there. This is going to be great. And so we wanted to cleave to him. We were trying to, you know, get close to him.
Right.
And he really wasn't having it, man. And then one of our friends got in trouble, you know, on some stuff that we didn't think it was that serious. The type of stuff that put him on restriction or whatever, punish him. They wanted to kick him out. We go to this guy, he was pretty clear, I'm not gonna help you. And I remember a number of us sitting in a room that night, and we're young, you know, we 19, 20 years old at the time. But we were conscious enough to say, like, look, if there comes a time when we in a position to help our people, we can't turn away from it. You know, there were some serious people in that room, man, and we didn't know it at the time. Some who finished at the Naval Academy, some who didn't. Myself, who goes on to become a professor, you know, very committed to black folk. My friend, Mauli Mel Davis, who's in Atlanta, is now, you know, the Johnny Cochran of that space, powerful attorney. Another friend of mine, my plebe year roommate, Mark Davis, who is a referee in the NBA now, you know, who leaves the Naval Academy, finishes up in another space. But all of us are still committed, you know, to that pledge we made to one another. So myself and my core of friends that I came into manhood with, whether we started to understand race earlier or later, that's a pledge that we made to one another and we made to ourselves, right? And beyond that, man, all of us are fathers. And at core, everything that we do, you know, me and my crew, it's about making this a better world for our children and their children who will follow them. Because if you're not doing that, then what are you really in it for? So, I mean, white supremacy has to be dismantled. That has to be the core of everything that you do if you're black. I don't care if you're a judge, if you're a professor, you're a ref, you're an athlete, you know, or a corporate executive.
Right.
If you're not looking to dismantle white supremacy so the playing field really is level, then you're not doing your job.
Right.
So that's what really drives me.
Well, you touched on something I was going to get to, but I'm glad you did. I called you a couple of nights ago. You were playing Fortnite with your kid.
Yeah.
We're coming up on Father's Day. Tell me about what it is being a father. What is it like being a father for you?
Well, you know, I have a daughter, you know, and for me, fatherhood is kind of a trial and error, piecemeal thing.
No handbooks.
No. Well, and no template, nothing, because I didn't have a father. You know, I think when you grow up fatherless like me, I think you can travel a couple of paths. That experience breaks a lot of people. it breaks a lot of brothers. It breaks a lot of sisters too. But I'll stay on men right now, so I'm talking fatherhood. It breaks people, or it sets up a situation where if those types of guys have children, they replicate what their fathers did. They see it being okay to kind of check out. But on the other side, and two, I think with that type of trauma, because it is a trauma, right? With that type of trauma, people function on extremes. So you'll have the people who are extremely negligent and will just move aside, or you'll have people who are just, almost overly committed, might overcompensate in some ways. That's me. Folk like that go through life without even realizing that they're doing it. We become incredibly. I was reading something about Barack Obama and saying that he did this and he didn't realize it. And I was like, dang, I've been doing that too. We'll go through and unconsciously collect fathers along the way. I'm a member of my fraternity because one of the first fathers I collected, James Terry, who was my 8th grade social studies teacher. And that's the reason I pledged Kappa Alpha Psi. There was no other reason. I thought all Kappas were like James Terry.
That's probably the only reason, but go ahead.
I was wrong. But we collect these fathers, and I've collected a number of them. But with my daughter, what I try to be for her, Derwin, is a mix of the best qualities I've seen in all of these men that I've met who have taken care of me, knew that I did not have a father, and have adopted me. And they still with me. They're still with me. And so while it's trial and error, I try to be everything that my father was not. So my daughter is a hell of a volleyball player. Man, and she plays club ball. So it costs a lot of money and it costs for a lot of travel. It's a deep investment. I enjoy it. Those are my happiest times, being on the road with her. Sitting in gyms. Yeah.
I get it.
That's emotional for me.
I get it. And
Yeah.
Because, I'm a judge. I'm a father. I have a lot of different titles. But I can tell you're kind of like me. The best job that you could ever have, best role you could ever have in this life is being somebody's father. I got 3, you have 1.
Yeah.
But being a father is what I want to be defined by, not just because I wear a robe, not because I've been a lawyer or whatever. Being a father is special for a lot of people, a lot of different reasons. So I get it. I get where you're coming from. Man.
Well, and D, it's real interesting how people see us as black men. We get characterized by what we do. Everybody, no matter how long you live and no matter what you do, they're going to go, Derwin Webb, he played ball at U of L. So you're defined as a basketball player or a judge or a lawyer, your professional achievements. But that's not who you are.
Right.
That's what you do. Those are some things that you've done. Those are achievements that you've accomplished because of, your physical and intellectual talent. But that's not even who you are as a man. I know you as a man. I've sat and had conversations with you where, you've called me up and you didn't even know what you were talking about. I know what you were talking about. And I've had conversations with you where I didn't know what I was talking about. Where you're like, man, I don't think I'm doing enough. I got to figure out a way to help people in a more effective, broader way. And I sit and listen. I'm like, well, D, what you want to do? And in a frustrated way, you're like, I don't know. But I know I got to do something. And I love you for that. But beyond that, with everything that you've been through, everything that you've dealt with, you're a judge now, but you ran for judge before and you lost.
Right.
And people don't understand that. And you didn't cower from that. You learned from it and you came back. And that's modeling for your children. And everything that you do, no matter what's happened in your personal life, romantically, maritally, any of that. First and foremost, you've been, protective of those children, committed to them, cuss them out when you have to, and bond with other brothers. And that's one thing that people, I think, miss about a lot of us black men. Because I believe the majority of us are doing the best we can as fathers.
Right.
Whether we're judges, professors, professional basketball players, garbage men, or a brother who's sitting on the corner right now struggling with crack addiction. He's still like, I got to do whatever I can to take care of my baby. And maybe the world breaks him to the point where he can't, but it don't mean he ain't trying.
Right.
And so that's a different thing. I just think I think black men are some of the most We're some of the most misunderstood human beings that walk the face of the earth. And I think that's why we tie ourselves to each other so strongly. The bonds between black men are really, really special, you know, because we walk through that you know, that suffering, that growth, those triumphs together. You know,
Well, I got one last question to ask you because we need to wrap it up. If you could change one thing about life for your daughter, what would it be?
For my daughter?
Yeah, for your daughter. See, we're in our 50s now, so we on the other side. But you got this little girl that you're raising right now. And in this environment that we have, what would you like to see different for her as she's growing up?
Oh, in the world?
Yeah, in the world.
Oh, that's easy. The eradication of white supremacy. I would love there to be a world where my daughter did not have to move through this world and she wouldn't have to think about race at all. Where I wouldn't have to think about race with her. Where I don't have to have conversations with my daughter about what's going on in the curriculum at her school, even though I think her school does a decent job. Where I don't feel like her mother and I have to have a shadow curriculum with her. You know, where she knows that everything is about merit, about her talent. And she knows that there's not a world where she would ever have to resist code switching and fitting in and assimilating. And of course, she's my daughter, right? So my daughter's like a little Angela Davis, so she knows those things. But I would think about everybody else's daughter and everybody else's son, where they don't have to deal with the stress of being black that America pushes on them.
Right.
That is something we can deal with it and we can joke about it and we can drink as men. But there was a time when we were boys.
Right.
And, you know, we have, it has affected us all. Some of us have just been a whole lot stronger than others. So if I could change something in this country, in this world, it would be that for my daughter. Because you can talk about the coronavirus all you want. But long before the coronavirus, white supremacy and racism were global pandemics. And they have spiritually, psychologically, identity-wise, economically, and physically destroyed millions upon millions of black people.
Right.
You know, if I had a magic wand, that's what I would destroy. I would wipe that from the face of the planet. Because I dread the fact that my child, your children, our brothers and sisters' children have to deal with that.
Right. Dot, I appreciate your time, man. I appreciate you coming and rapping to me. We have these kind of conversations all the time to begin with, but I just appreciate you. I want to say this just for the record. Man, I love you. You have been there for me since day one. We can talk about anything. You're never going to judge me. And I appreciate you being who you are for me, not for anybody else, just for me. Right. So I just want to say thank you, man, for being my first guest and just taking the time just to come on the show.
Well, back at you, man. I mean, this went fast, but I would say to you, you know, good luck in this endeavor, wherever it takes you. You know, two words I think are overused in the world are love and friend. You know, people throw those around way too much. I would use both of them with you. You know, I love you. I count you as a dear friend. If something were to happen to me or happen to my child, you know, if I can't get to my child and you somewhere near, I'm like, hey, call Uncle Derwin, he'll take care of you. So, you know, that's the greatest respect. So respect and love to you, brother.
All right, brother. Appreciate you, man.
No doubt.